We will now go to 3.6. This is the adoption of Ordinance 884, an ordinance of the County of Riverside regulating targeted residential picketing. We have a number of speakers. Our first speaker will be Doug Owens from Pasadena. He has been given 3 minutes from Tom Provenzano from West Hills and Lynn Campbell from Los Angeles. Mr. Owens, 9 minutes you have.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Doug Owens, and it's a pleasure to address you today.
Thank you.
I've made arrangements with the clerk's office to show you a short PowerPoint video presentation. May I play that presentation for you now?
We'll have somebody assist you in just one moment.
Thank you.
You bet. You're not losing any time, so. Did you give a disk or something?
I'm sorry, I gave it to the county clerk's office, and they have installed it on your computer here.
Okay.
I thought the county clerk...
Here he comes to the rescue. I guess before we get started, I want to just reemphasize that this is a residential targeted ordinance, that we appreciate if you would not utilize this forum for any issues you have with any religious institutions. If you just limit your comments to the ordinance, we'd really appreciate that. Mr. Owens, with your indulgence, I'm going to call the next speaker. Is that okay for 3 minutes until we get our situation working here? I'll call on Mark Condon from Cherry Valley. You have 3 minutes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you. First of all, I'd like to thank Bob Buster for using conservativeness when the purchase of his vehicle, not buying a luxury vehicle, and my hat goes off to you on that mere fact. What I'm here to speak about, I'm a retired Riverside County Sheriff's Deputy, and it concerns me when I read in the paper this 884. I've read it in its entirety. It seems really poorly written. I personally think that our constitutional rights are very important, and I'm afraid that we're going to slowly whittle away at them. And some of the ordinances in the recent past have done that, to where it's becoming more and more difficult to live in Riverside County and not be in violation of some code enforcement. There's already a huge bunch of state laws that we enforce now. And as I understand, we're enforced recently at this last incident that this seems to be a tailor-fit law too. The fact that you could be across the street seems like, well, that's a great thing. I can be across the street, but if they own the street across, then I can't picket across the street. Now, personally, I have no intention of picketing that particular person or establishment, but I want to be able to picket sexual offenders that move into my neighborhood. And if they own the street across from this street, I can't do it. If they don't have a sidewalk, this specifically discusses sidewalks, I can't do it. It even says that if I'm guilty of it and they cite me for it, I can be cited once a day. It doesn't describe what a day is. If I actually am cited for that, I can continue the rest of the day. So it doesn't stop what you want to do, which is to stop the protesting. I would like the county to not get involved personally with little battles and whatnot. I don't know that much about the particular church or group that's being picketed against, and I don't know anything about the group that's picketing for them. I know that in the past, when I was a sheriff's deputy active, the Scientology people did not give us access in a homicide investigation, and they weren't our friends. And I think that since then that things have been, that we've, made great strides to be good neighbors, It concerns me that we are specifically tailoring a law just to protect them, and I would really like to see that we not get involved in that and just work with the penal code section. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. Ms. Walls will have a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Condon. I just wanted to address a couple things regarding the specific language of the ordinance. And sidewalk space is defined in the ordinance doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a concrete sidewalk. It's defined as including the area between the property line and the vehicular traffic line. So you don't necessarily actually have to have a curb and gutter there. And also he did mention about whether each and every day that there is the targeted residential picketing taking place, whether that would be a separate violation. And under Section 5 of the penalty section, it would be a separate violation. And the last comment I'd like to make is this is an ordinance that only regulates targeted residential picketing, and that's picketing that proceeds in front of or around the residence. If it's not targeting a residence, it's not going to be regulated by this. It's a narrowly drawn ordinance, and it may or may not apply to the conduct of that's going on in front of the Golden Era Production Studios. Thank you.
Are we next on our presentation? So I can call Mr. Owens back up? Great. Mr. Owens, sorry about the delay.
Thank you. If I could show you this short presentation.
Here's what I'm going to ask you. It is against the law for you guys to block the driveway. What you're doing right now is blocking the driveway. They already came out here and they already asked you to leave the area and to not block the driveway. I'm going to give you a chance to leave the area. Here's what I'm going to ask you. It is against the law for you guys to block the driveway. What you're doing right now is blocking the driveway. Relax. And they already came out here and they already asked you to leave the area and to not block the driveway. I'm going to give you a chance to leave the area. Will you comply? Will you not block the driveway? We will block the driveway. We will walk across it. Okay. So you are agreeing to not block the driveway. Yes. You are going to leave. Yes. But we'll walk back and across it. I need you to leave the driveways and not block the ingress or egress of anyone.
Oh, we never did.
Okay. We can't have you crossing the driveway and blocking the ingress or egress.
The only people blocking the ingress or egress are you and your wife.
So are we all So are you
walking backwards and forward?
Time out. What did we just agree to?
You will not have these left in ingress.
Okay. And I can't have you guys blocking
Yeah, you've been a place for that. Yeah. If they do it hard,
Are you saying that you will not comply?
I'm saying you will entitled to walk. We have been told.
Okay. I am asking you to comply with the law and not block their driveway.
We never do.
Okay. Are you willing to comply with that and not block and not walk in front of their driveway?
No, we're willing to get from that side of the street to that side of the street without walking across here.
Okay. So that means you have to pick one side or the other.
I think it's no.
Are you willing to comply?
I am willing to comply.
Okay, then I need you to move, sir. I need you to move at this point in time, or else you'll be in violation. Yes, sir.
Because we're blocking.
Hold on. Does everybody understand? Does everybody understand what we're agreeing to? Does everybody understand what we're agreeing to?
No.
Okay.
We don't want.
Then I need you to move off and not block the driveway. Okay. I need you to move and not block the driveway. If you remain here, you're going to block the driveway. You're in violation of the law, and I will have to arrest you. I need you to move.
And so your position, officer, I'm sure.
one more time. I need you to comply. Thank you. One side or the other? If there's no car in the driveway, then we're not walking it. We're walking the driveway. No, I understand that, but I just don't, well, okay. Frankly, I'm going to ask you one last... Come over here and say that. Just come over here and say that. We're walking the driveway. My understanding that protesters are always allowed to cross a driveway.
Right, it's
They just can't stop and
Exactly.
stop cars from
Exactly.
going in or...
This is
As long as you're moving,
Yes.
you're protesting.
yes, this is a public street.
This is shocking. This is really shocking.
I'm going to push it.
Well, look at all the water they're wasting.
I know.
Wasting water against the environment here.
Think of what their golf course does every day.
Yeah.
Is that Tommy Davis that I just talked about? I need you to put the camera down. You're gonna come with us.
What?
You're under arrest
What for?
for trespassing.
Turn it off.
Turn it off. Okay.
Okay, I shot that video. That video is unedited. I would like to ask each of you how you would have felt if the sheriff had acted this way towards you during the David Dokovich protest. I believe by passing Ordinance 884 today, you will be sending a message to Ms. Frazier, who is in the inner fanatical core of Scientology, that you support her calling law enforcement unnecessarily to facilitate her unlawful citizens' arrest of lawfully abiding protesters. Also, by passing this ordinance today, you will be sending a green light to the Sheriff's Department to make unlawful and vague demands and to unlawfully cite peaceful, law-abiding protesters as a pretext to deprive them of their greatest constitutional rights to peacefully assemble, to have free press, and to exercise free speech, all hallmarks of our great country. I urge you to send a strong message to the Sheriff's Department to ensure the rights of demonstrators instead of depriving them of their rights. Vote no on the second reading of this ordinance. As a government body, don't take the dangerous risk that your vote will unduly harm someone's freedom of speech, assembly, and the ability of a free press to flourish in this great country. Thank you.
Mr. Owens, thank you very much. Appreciate you bringing your video. I just want to reiterate that this was not a breach of the ordinance. This was a breach of trespassing. And a property owner has the right to warn you that you're trespassing, and if you continue to trespass, then you're breaking the law. Mark Bunker from San Diego. No.
I was also arrested that day for the same trespassing charge. We went back a few days later on Saturday. The exact same thing, no problem. Walking through the driveway, sheriff's deputy said fine. Anyway, bear with me for a moment, Mr. Stone, and you've mentioned that you were Jewish. I'd just like you to imagine for a moment that this building is run by a rabbi. And everybody who works in this building is now also living in this building, so it's a residence. And around the building is a big iron fence topped with a barbed wire and motion detectors, and there are guards at the gate who won't let anyone in or out without the permission of the rabbi. You're working 90 hours a week for $50. If you're lucky, once every 2 weeks you may get 1 day off. Now, Mr. Stone, your office now has bunk beds because all of you are living in your office. and it's crowded. And maybe Mr. Wilson one day says, boy, this sucks. Well, Mr. Luna then has to write up a report and send it to the rabbi saying, Mr. Wilson says this sucks. Mr. Wilson is hauled up in front of the rabbi's ethics officer, who hooks him up to a lie detector and says, why on earth would you say this sucks? I mean, you want to help people, don't you? I mean, you came into this building to help people, and you know you're the only people that can help the people of this county. So, to get yourself back in the right mindset, the rabbi puts you in the rehabilitation project force. And you're isolated from anybody else. You can't talk unless somebody else has first talked to you. You're fed rice and beans, and you work hard labor half of the day, and the other half of the day you have to study the teachings of the rabbi until you get back into good graces. Now that could last for months or even years. And during that time, Mr. Wilson's wife, his children, his grandchildren may not even have an idea where he is or what his health is like. Now, these things are going on every day inside the Scientology's building. The people, Mr. Wilson's wife couldn't reach to somebody outside this building because their phone calls are monitored and their mail is read. I'm telling you, if this was happening in this building, I would be outside this building protesting for your rights, Mr. Stone. There are people in this county who need your help. And it's not David Miscavige who's causing these abuses. It's the people who are actively in there who can't turn to you for help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Our next speaker is Julie Waltz. Julie, if you could please mention your address and the city you're from for the record, I'd appreciate that. Okay, Julie Waltz wants to be on hold, is that right? Donald Meyers from West Hollywood. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm sure I speak for everyone in the room when I hope that we are done speaking on this issue. So since this is the last time we can speak, I would like to thank Mr. Stone for reading the black PR about Anonymous early on in this, because it made some very mean, nasty people on the internet wake up and realize that what they say and the slanderous things they talk about have repercussions, regardless of how you feel on any issue. Almost anything you do on the internet involving a conversation is you'll get smeared, and I'm very glad he pointed that out. Also, the internet stream looks great here, but on the internet everything is sepia toned, and this camera doesn't really work very well. Catherine Frazier had a dramatic picture of a overturned car, and when you see her give that presentation on the internet, you can barely even see what the pictures are. So I hope you'll check out that camera. As was mentioned, and you saw that video, there were arrests last Tuesday after this meeting, and Sergeant Kurlowitz acted in an extremely improper manner. Catherine Frazier just pointed at people at random and had them arrested. Now, Ms. Walls, you worked hard on this to make sure that this was legally well written, but the trouble was it didn't stop us from protesting, so the Scientologists have got to find some other way to stop us. Now, you all promised us that we could protest there if we did not target residences. This sergeant, or this Kurlowitz, had us moving all over the place in a desperate attempt to get us away from the front doors, to the point where he told us to move back to the Sea Org buildings we are not supposed to protest. His every effort was to either bait us into being arrested or to get us away from the front gate at all times. And then this weekend, the opposite happened. There were no cops, and I had to stomp on the flowers in the public property in order to get the cops to show up, because we want police there. I don't trust the Scientologists. They also wasted a huge amount of water, sprayed water all over us, and ruined my signs. Now, Mr. Stone, have you heard of a Scientology process called a purification rundown? It's a Scientology exercise where they take large quantities of vitamins, especially niacin. Now, Mr. Stone, you're a pharmacist, correct? And how long have you been a pharmacist in Hemet?
I'm not a pharmacist in Hemet, but I've been a pharmacist for 28 years.
And is it true that you don't just sell vitamins, you mix vitamins? Is that true?
I make all kinds of things.
But do you make vitamins?
Yes, we do.
And do you make niacin?
Is that germane to this discussion?
Yes, it does, because
No,
it explains why you were so eager to help Scientology out.
I don't make niacin. I don't make any products for the Scientologists.
Okay.
I deal with
Well, your actions over many years are now going to put you in a bad position. You can either be seen as soft on organized crime when you do what the Scientologists want, and when you don't do what the Scientologists want, they're eventually going to break your thumbs. Have you ever thought that this is an organized criminal organization? They killed Judge Swearinger's dog, and they could kill your dog too eventually. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Our next speaker will be Graham Berry. He has been given 3 minutes by Gary Scharf and 3 minutes by Patricia Curtis. Graham Berry from Los Angeles. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, both on the board and the audience and across the world who are watching on the video cameras far away in Sweden and Russia. Last week I pled with this board to rework and clarify this ordinance and its application at the Scientology compound before unlawful arrests were made, and they have been. Ordinance 884 does not pass constitutional muster. It is vague, ambiguous, and unenforceable because there have been critical changes made to the San Diego ordinance that the county relies upon for its legitimacy here. Section 3 of the definitions section of the Riverside Ordinance differs significantly from the San Diego Ordinance. It adds 3 definitions, clearly designed to apply to the Scientology premises. Sidewalk space. Everyone knows there's none at Gold Base. Then there's a definition of street, which is defined arguably to include the very space that the Scientology attorney, the board's counsel, and several board members have said was available for picketing, the very area near the guardhouse and opposite, which is where last week's arrests were made. If Catherine Fraser speaks here again today, I ask you to question her on these 3 arrests. A definition of targeted dwelling is also added to the Riverside County Ordinance. Now, Section 4 is really where the material changes are made, because the San Diego Ordinance restricts targeted picketing to 300 feet from the targeted dwelling. The Riverside Ordinance restricts targeted picketing to 30 feet from the property line on which the targeted dwelling is located. And then you have Section 5, which adds a whole series of additional penalties, clearly designed and directed at people like Keith Henson, who picketed Gold Base for an entire summer, was arrested, convicted, and imprisoned for 6 months for misdemeanor terrorism and interfering with the practice of a religion for mentioning the possibility of a Tom Cruise missile arriving at Gold Base. These are material differences, and they cause the vagueness problem now being experienced. Last Tuesday morning, as you have heard, in contradiction of the representations made to this board, people were arrested by sheriff's deputies already waiting at that location when the picketers arrived.
But they were not arrested on this ordinance. This ordinance hadn't taken effect yet. They were arrested for trespassing.
If you're going to interrupt me, either stop the clock or perhaps give me my question.
Let's stick to the facts, shall we?
That is not a fact. They were arrested for trespassing on an area covered by this ordinance, and I trust that the time is off now, sir, because you're eating into my 9 minutes.
I will give you enough time.
Because you have encouraged Ms. Fraser and the Scientologists to act as though they're making arrests under this ordinance. You have given them the green light for that conduct. Now,
sir, if anybody trespasses on any residential property in this county, they have a right to make a citizen's arrest, and they have a right to call the police or the sheriff.
With the time still off, Your Honour, this is clearly public property. The area from one curb to the other curb in a straight line is public property. And that is the line on which the arrests were made, parallel in line with the curb.
If your assertions are correct, you have due process, you can go to court, and you can prove that and have any charges reversed, correct?
And that is because of vagueness caused by this resolution, which has caused these people additional and expense to validate their civil rights, which have been encroached upon as a result of this ordinance. either in its application or its formulation. Now, can I continue with the time starting again?
Please.
These are material differences. Sorry. Last Saturday, 2 deputies took the exact opposite position on camera and videotaped, which is now available for evidence to the federal court when this matter gets there. Now, the next significant issue is that the public roadway extends 50 feet from the centre lane. When it was a state highway, it proceeded 100 feet from the centre lane. And the public property that people would normally walk on here has been encroached upon by the Scientology enterprise with non-native flowers, with listening devices, with other vegetation, with sprinklers and pieces of concrete saying this is trespassing. It is irrelevant that the public land has been encroached upon by Scientology. The people are still entitled to picket on that land and to walk on that verge, even though the Scientologists have covered it with flowers, vegetation, listening devices, and water. It is a traditional public forum in fact, as well as in law. And where are these 550 supposed residents of Gold Base? Where are they? You've not heard from one. You've heard from Catherine Fraser, the Riverside County Council, yourself, and the attorney for Scientology. Now, what about the non-Scientology residents of Riverside? The only one of those you've heard from is a former deputy sheriff. And I can add that there are deputy sheriffs all over California expressing their outrage on the internet as to what is happening here. Now, why are the local residents not here in support of this ordinance? Probably because it restricts the picketing rights already in place for sex offenders and the like. What is vague and therefore makes the ordinance, as drafted, unenforceable is the vagueness of the property line itself. Here, the Riverside Ordinance does not even clearly provide ample alternative means of communication as the Klein and Frisbee cases require. The law should provide a clear and definite line as to what and what is not permissible, and that is why this ordinance may be found unconstitutional. Now, some of these problems could be resolved if only the county council and the sheriff would meet with representatives of the picketers. In a spirit of cooperation, it could probably be agreed that picketing at Gold Base would be restricted to the entrance to the main gate, the entrance across from the main gate, and the 4 other entrances and exits, and above the 2 pedestrian tunnels that go under the road. When a similar dispute to this arose in the city of Clearwater, another Scientology mecca, the city of Clearwater responded by defining clearly designated areas around Scientology offices and dwellings such as the Fort Harrison Hotel that anti-Scientology crime and abuse picketers could demonstrate in. The law requires you and the sheriff to act in a fair, impartial and equitable manner, such as meeting with all affected groups and not just the Scientology representatives. Now, there is one other matter here, and that is, for the record, an objection to conferences and conflicts of interest which arise from the relationships between the chairman of the board and the Church of Scientology attorney who represents the Scientology enterprise. Those matters have gone into, but for the record, I reassert them. And also for the record, the only injuries and violence at Gold Base or anywhere else in the world have been caused by the Scientologists. One instance of 3 of them dogpiling, hog-tying, and injuring a person picketing on the property on October 26, which resulted, again, in a citizen's arrest. And there's going to be civil litigation against Gold Base and its staffers for that and last week's arrests. If Catherine Fraser speaks to you today, I ask you to question her as to those arrests and why the water sprinklers were turned on the protesters as soon as they started walking beside that road last Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And could you also talk about conflict of interest?
Thank you. I would just like to point out that the definition for targeted picketing in this ordinance is verbatim the definition that is from the San Diego County ordinance, and that was upheld in the Klein decision. And the Klein case is a Ninth Circuit case that upheld targeted picketing ordinances. And in that case, it further cites to Thornburg versus Austin and the Brunel case as being acceptable targeted picketing ordinances. And in both those cases, the courts upheld a distance of 50 feet from the targeted residence's property line and upheld that as the constitutional regulation of picketing activity. This ordinance is even narrower than the Klein, ordinance, San Diego County ordinance upheld in Klein, and the Thornburg and Brunel ordinances. It only regulates up to 30 feet from the property line, and it accepts the sidewalk area across the street from the targeted residence. I don't believe that this is an issue that the First Amendment challenge would be successful in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Julie Waltz, are you ready now? Julie?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Honorable Supervisors. I'm here today again to speak about Ordinance 884, residential targeted picketing. And just for the record, I'm not affiliated with either group. Okay, as Riverside County Supervisors, when you were sworn into office, you all took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Yet now that you are in office, it appears that the United States Constitution plays second fiddle to special interest and special interest groups. It appears that many of you as supervisors have been subject to protests in the course of your careers. The ramrodding of the ordinance gives the appearance that you want to stifle opposition to your proposals and actions in county government issues. This ordinance is only an attempt by you to silence the people who disagree with you. You were elected to represent all the people of Riverside County, not just special interest groups. To silence the voice of the people should not be within your realm of power. From your own statements, you chose only one party from this dispute to meet with. County Council, from your own statements, you chose only one party from this dispute to meet with County Council to write this ordinance that you were directly involved in. This appears to be a conflict of interest. You should have both sides meet with you regarding this dispute to write this ordinance. If convicted high-risk sex offender David Allen Dokage had complained to the Board of Supervisors, would you have invited him to write his own ordinance? Now remember the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America. We the people, not you the elected officials. Remember, you are elected, not anointed. Today I know you will vote this ordinance in because you don't want to, because you want and you refuse to hear the voice of opposition. And I also would like to, for the record,
Julie, your time's just about up.
I'm sorry, but please let me finish. This is important. Your Chief of Staff, Mr. Lorenz, said the ordinance was requested by the Church of Scientology International, the target of a repeated protest by people who disagree with their religion at its 700-acre campus along Gilman Springs Road north of Hemet. The campus is the site of Golden Era Productions, which produces the church literatures and videos. They were victims of rather nasty, aggressive picket.
Julie, your time's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a couple of quick comments. Number one, I don't think this ordinance has been ramrodded through. This has been vetted many times for the public to have the opportunity to discuss it. This was not authored by anybody other than our county council with the consultation of our sheriff and looking at the San Diego ordinance. So there's a lot of mistruths that have been stated here today that we need to clarify. And you're absolutely right. It needs to protect all people. And we're protecting people that live in residences that are targeted through residential protesting. 30 feet, we showed what 30 feet was. It's basically from one side of the chairs to the others. It still gives you ample opportunity to make the protest that you need. Susan Elliott, if you'll come forward, please state your name, your address, and city you're from for the record. Good morning.
Okay, I'm Susan Elliott from Laguna Beach. After last week's meeting, I was extremely confused, but thanks to the help of a lot of people who pored over the videos of the meetings and the various versions of the ordinance, things have become clearer. Last week, Mark Bunker asked Ms. Walls if she wrote the ordinance, and Ms. Walls said, "I went ahead and wrote that ordinance, and I based it, I think, on the San Diego ordinance." Then Mr. Bunker asked if she wrote the first version, which she said she did, and then he asked who wrote the second version, and we don't know the answer to that question because Mr. Stone interrupted. The confusing part is, why did Ms. Walls interrupt every speaker who spoke against the ordinance, insisting the ordinance in its current form allows people to protest in an area away from the residential dwellings, when that is clearly not what the ordinance in its present form says? Her interpretation pertains to the original ordinance, which we know she wrote, but not to the current ordinance, whose author is unknown. Did Ms. Walls change the words residential dwelling that you can see in November 16th to the words property as measured from the property line? There's no mention of residence there. Obviously, what she falsely stated is not what is here in black and white. Why? Does she know what it says or does she not know what it says because she didn't write it? Or does she know what it says and deliberately misrepresented it? In either case, it's alarming. The worst part is, I assume the supervisor is about to pass an ordinance not based on what it really says, but on Ms. Wall's false interpretation. And what if the ordinance is passed? We were told last week that this ordinance has nothing to do with the Church of Scientology, but rather it is for a mythical Mormon bishop who voted yes on Prop 8. No one knows who this mythical bishop is or where he lives, maybe not even in Riverside. But in any case, the second version of the ordinance is actually worse for this mythical bishop. Instead of having protesters 300 feet from his house, now they are 30 feet from his property line. But guess what? If a certain church had a huge mile-long property occupying both sides of a road with residences anywhere on the property, the second version moves the protesters a mile away, whereas the first version would have had them 300 feet from the residential dwellings. The other problem is the original version mirrors the San Diego version, which was successfully defended in court. And this one is different, and it's also missing text from the Nebraska version.
Ms. Elliott, you'll need to summarize your times.
Okay, I like to believe that the best in people, and I've seen some actions, especially from Mr. Buster and Mr. Wilson, that shows they are men of character and integrity. And I believe that there's an inkling of, in all of your hearts and minds, that something isn't right here, and I urge you to go with that feeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Our next speaker is Lara Bishop, and she's been given 3 minutes from Thelma Grant and 3 minutes from Francois Chiquette. I have a total of 9 minutes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Actually, we do know what was said on February 24th because I listened to it over and over. My name is Lara Bishop, and I am from Paris. Supervisor Stone and County Counsel Pamela Waltz continue to insist that Attorney Alhadeff and his client, the Church of Scientology, were not involved in the drafting of Ordinance 884 or instrumental in drafting the ordinance. On February 24th, 2009, the following exchange took place between Supervisor Stone, County Counsel, and Mark Bunker. At 1:30:12, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 12 seconds, Stone: Pam, would you please explain who drafted the ordinance? It was not Mr. Alhadeff. County Counsel: I went ahead and drafted that ordinance, and I based it on, I believe it was the County of San Diego ordinance. Bunker: the first ordinance that Stone brought to us, or this revised version? Walls: the original ordinance that was brought, I drafted based on a case. I believe it was the County of San Diego or the City of San Diego. Stone: I gave her the copy of the City of San Diego. Bunker: was Scientology involved in it, the drafting of it? Stone: no, it was a copy of San Diego's ordinance that was 500 feet, where we're talking about 30 feet today. Bunker: so Scientology had nothing to do with bringing this ordinance? Stone: they did not construct, did not have anything to do with that ordinance. But on November 25th, 2008, the day that Supervisor Stone introduced the Ordinance 884, he stated at 46 minutes, 43 seconds. Sorry. The ordinance came about as a result of a group of individuals that have been very outspoken in admonishing the rights of others to practice a religion. And they have been extremely contentious, and it was as a result of their request that we examine what we can do, because some of these very hateful individuals that just have a problem with this particular religion were engaging in some very contentious and potentially violent demonstrations in front of their property that was totally inappropriate. We are also, and you went on to say, we are also seeing that as a result of Prop 8 passing, that there has been some demonstrations against church groups and protests that have maybe stepped over the line. Well, demonstrating a group is completely different than demonstrating a residence. On that same day, at 50 minutes 38, Supervisor Stone stated, this was brought forward by a group that was very concerned about hate crimes. That's not a residential concern if it's brought by a group. And on January 13th, 2009, at 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 56 seconds, Attorney Alhadeff stated, what I had proposed to County Counsel and what we're working on is a collaborative meeting with the sheriff, with County Counsel, to do exactly what the board asked us to do, and then to report back. At 1:15:48, he said, all of the things that were discussed today really are not germane to the ordinance. The only thing that really is germane or relevant to the ordinance today is for us to do exactly what the board asked us to do and to report back to the board. And that's what we propose to do. He continues at 1:17:15. Basically, what happened is the sheriff said, if this was the city of Riverside, we could protect you. This is presumably the catalyst for Attorney Alhadeff and the Church of Scientology approaching Supervisor Stone for his assistance in introducing Ordinance 884. At 1:17:48, Attorney Alhadeff says, "I don't know what else to add except I think we ought to go about doing what we were supposed to do and follow the orders of the board." In conclusion, the following exchange between Supervisor Buster and Attorney Alhadeff leaves no doubt that the Ordinance 884 was introduced to protect the Church of Scientology and that its legal counsel worked side by side with County Counsel and the Sheriff in drafting Ordinance 884. At 1:20:35 on January 13, 2009, Supervisor Buster, "Why is it needed?" Alhadeff, "It is needed." Buster, Why are we going to such great lengths? Why is it needed?" Alhadeff, "It is needed because we are trying to protect these people who live there and work there and go from their residences to a dining hall and who do not particularly care to have people yelling or screaming at them as they go in their apartments or in their homes. And this ordinance has had a prophylactic measure on that question. Alhadeff never mentioned concern for protecting a Mormon bishop." Supervisor Buster, this is what you said, "I want to make life simpler for everyone involved, particularly those who have to enforce these laws, the sheriff. They need to have clearer rules too, under which otherwise all kinds of problems can ensue. And this seems to me to be very, very much more complicated than it needs to be." Attorney Alhadeff, "Mr. Buster, I couldn't agree more. And if you would allow us to do exactly what you ordered us to do, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to meet with the sheriff. We're going to meet with county council. We're going to work this through. That's what we're supposed to do." Now, Supervisor Buster did go on to say that probably wouldn't be a good idea, but this was already in January. This was introduced in November, and Attorney Alhadeff had already been working with you guys. You know, this whole ordinance is tainted. The motivation behind it, Mr. Stone, is tainted. Supervisor Jeff Stone and County Counsel Pamela Walls' deliberate lies to the board and to the public warrant an investigation by the California Attorney General's office. If you other supervisors are willing to vote yes based on these words by Mr. Stone, County Counsel, and Alhadeff, then you too warrant investigation by the Attorney General's office. And let's see, I still have time. I've never used this before. That's me. John and Ken from KFI, Lori Stone, my son, Tony Rogers. This is the protest. This is Lori Stone. She was not 30 feet away from the property line on that day. I wasn't 30 feet from the property line. The blonde lady here was the vice principal from Columbia Elementary School with her son. There's Julie Waltz. Thank you. We have protesters in front of the gate, sheriff cars. Nobody's being arrested. So why were the people at Gold Base arrested?
Because they trespassed.
Well, aren't we trespassing here? You can't trespass on a public way. Now, no matter how many times you try and spin it, it's not going to change that it's public. We've got parole cars, sheriff cars. Here we are with the bullhorns. We've got somebody standing here. Nobody's being arrested. Here you are with a KFI microphone. You're probably 30 feet from the property line only because you're right off of the highway. But Mr. Ashley, you were there that day. Mr. Buster, you were there that day as well as Mr. Stone. And you know that we were always walking in front. We weren't blocking it. Here's a back view of you. Now, just one more thing. I don't know if you guys are aware that I put a parole officer by the name of Joe Nolette under citizen's arrest at the David Allen Dokich protest for assault with a deadly weapon that weapon being his car. Now, he in turn turned around and placed me under citizen's arrest for a Penal Code 148, interfering, obstructing a peace officer. Do you know that we never got processed? We've got assault with a deadly weapon and a 148. Then you've got trespassing at Gold Base, and they get processed. What's up with that?
You have 10 seconds.
Why don't you go online to Google and Google Jeff Stone's changing story?
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Next speaker will be Sam Alhadeff. Sir, I'm sorry, you've already spoken. There's no reason to recuse myself. I'll have the county council define why anyone should recuse themselves from this discussion, and it does not pertain to myself.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. There are certain instances where you would be required to disclose and to disqualify yourself if you had a financial interest under the Fair Political Practices Commission and the Political Reform Act. For example, under Government Code Section 84308, if you had a financial interest, it could require the disclosure and disqualification. In this particular government code section, it would be a proceeding having to do with a license, permit, or other entitlement. Also, this is a legislative action. It's not an action on a permit proceeding or license or other entitlement. Also, I know that it was raised about campaign contributions, and even this code section exempts out elected officials from having a financial interest in connection with their campaign contributions. So whether there's a legally imposed obligation to disqualify in this proceeding, I would contend there isn't an absolute legal requirement to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Alhadeff.
Sam Alhadeff, Temecula, California. Thank you. I really don't know where to start. Last week I was sort of the one tarred. This week I stand in good company with County Council, the Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff, and I don't know who else. But let me try to quickly get to the chase here. Number one, Ms. Walls drafted this ordinance. Number two, Ms. Walls and I never had a conversation about the draft that's before you today until after it was submitted in a Form 11 and it was made public. Number three, we did provide copies of various ordinances to County Council when this was initially looked at because we wanted to give the opportunity, when I say we, just me, give the opportunity to County Council to look at what had been done in other cities. This is very common. By the way, when I was city attorney in the city of Indio, I would often call on my friends and colleagues from other cities or municipalities to give me examples of what could be available for a particular ordinance. So I did not find that uncommon or in any way out of bounds. As Supervisor Wilson so aptly pointed out, this ordinance is not yet in effect. So what happened out there, I wasn't there, but from what everything I've been able to understand is that there were violations of the penal code and there were violations of county codes with regard to where people walked or where they didn't walk. It is clear that from the penal code you cannot obstruct entrances. I noticed it on the video there that the mail truck was trying to get through when everybody was standing in the middle of this driveway. Going on, I found it interesting that this ordinance was being contested when it is not yet effective. So having said that, turning quickly to what occurred with regard to constitutionality, the city of Riverside has a very similar ordinance. The distance is different. They went through these issues in 1996 and 1997 when they passed not only this ordinance but an ordinance prohibiting people from blocking entrances and exits of health clinics and the like. Finally, with regard to campaign contributions, I have in the past, over the number of years, given campaign contributions to various elected officials. I will continue to do that. That's my constitutional right. I have never seen anybody influenced by a contribution that I'm aware of, and I've gotten a lot of no's as well as yeses, so I understand that. Having said that, I think what we've done here today is a real hallmark in American democracy. You've given every opportunity over about a 5-month period to a small group of individuals to come in and to lay out their concerns. You've been patient, you've been considerate. I'm not sure they have been as patient and considerate with you, but I appreciate what you've done, and in fact, I appreciate the fact that we all have this opportunity. I think this has been a well-vetted ordinance. I applaud the County Council for their integrity and standing up for what's gone on, and I appreciate the time that I've had to speak to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alhadeff.
One other point. There was one point, and I apologize.
Make it fast, please, sir.
I will. There was delivered to the board letters from individuals who do reside at the Golden Era campus with regard to their feelings about what's going on. And I might add, parenthetically, I did enjoy the one comment about the individual who said he was happy when the police came because he felt more protected. I guess what happens, though, is when you damage about $3,000 worth of plants, you get arrested. Thanks.
Mr. Alhadeff, I don't see any more requests to speak. Is there anyone else wishing that hasn't spoken to address the board on this issue before I close the hearing? In that case, I'll close the hearing. Supervisor Buster.
Can someone enlighten me about the particular physical circumstances at that entrance? If someone's walking down Gilman Springs Road on that side of the Gilman Springs Road, can they continue across that entrance, both approaching it and crossing the driveway, obviously on the pavement? But then, can they get up? Is there some kind of a path, a dirt path at least, where they can walk by? And they don't have to get out in the street. They don't have to get out on the pavement. I mean, like an ordinary sidewalk. Or do they have to go out in the street, even on the verges of that entranceway there, in order not to trample on the flowers or not to have the sprinklers get on their clothing? What happens there? I mean, from just a pedestrian, not anybody's going to protest. Just somebody walking down Gilman Springs Road. What happens when they get to that entrance? Do they have to go out into the street and possibly watch out for cars that may be turning in there and creating a hazardous situation? Or are they going to have to trample on the flowers? Or do they have an actual path or walkway that they can stay off the street until they have to cross that driveway? Can someone answer that for me? Yeah. Sure.
Walk down that roadway. There is the curb and the side.
Up to the mic.
Why don't you come with the mic?
There's a microphone up there.
The curb ends and the Scientology vegetation and their sprinklers and their motion detectors and sensors start. There is no pathway that you can walk down beside the roadway. You've either got to walk,
so you have to get out onto the roadway then.
You
at
either
that
walk
point.
on the actual curb itself or in the gutter.
Or in the gutter.
And that is public land beside the roadway, but they've encroached upon it, as I said. And if they turn on the sprinklers... I didn't want a long explanation. I think I understand. So a pedestrian that happened to be coming along at the time this protest, when the sprinklers were on, would either have to get wet and possibly trample on some flowers, or they would have to actually get off the side of the road and come out into the roadway before they cross this driveway. Is that correct? Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, I think we answered your question. Thank you.
All right. Well, let me just suggest in this particular case out here that that's part of the problem here, that there's no place for there's no sidewalk, even an undeveloped dirt path, and it forces anyone to go out into the roadway before they even cross, which could be a dangerous circumstance for anyone walking. I mean, normally you get to a driveway, you are going to look around to see if there's any traffic coming. But if you have to get out on the road, I mean, I know there's a lot of roads like this in the county. I mean, I have Washington Street near my house, for example, that in certain areas there's a lot of vegetation and fences and whatnot, and encroach into the right-of-way probably, and force any pedestrians, particularly those walking side by side, to really get out too close to cars, and there's overhanging branches and the like. So you have a similar circumstance here, where the protesters are, when they're there, they're put between a rock and a hard place. They're either out there, they don't want to get wet, they're in a dangerous situation, or they're blocking traffic going in and out of the driveway. So they're kind of in a no-win situation. I understand why Scientology doesn't want to have protesters embellishing its front entranceway for everybody to look at. I mean, I understand that. At the same time, though, I think you have to provide for safety there, and I think that's partially responsibility of Scientology and the county if they're encroaching on that area, so that a pedestrian and protester can't get off the street. So I think that's one of the contributing here to the confusion and the lack of consistency and the difficulty for law enforcement agencies to make what are often, difficult calls out there. And they're primarily, and I thought that officer was trying to create a safer situation for everybody involved. But here we have this ordinance, and it's gone through a lot of changes, which has also caused a lot of confusion as well. And really, a good ordinance should come out of clear circumstances, consistent circumstances, and in this case, have a compelling interest behind its passage. And that's where I think we fall short here, because the ordinance itself, and I appreciate the comparison that was put up here, that's helpful, but that's not all of what this ordinance says. The ordinance defines targeted picketing as picketing that is targeted at a particular residential dwelling and proceeds on a definite course or route in front of or around that particular residential dwelling. If both these things have to occur, one could argue that this ordinance has no bearing at all on protesters that are in front of the entranceway. They're not, as I understand it, they're not in what we would normally think of is in front of a particular residential dwelling. There's different levels at which you can misunderstand this ordinance, or when you're trying to apply it, you can foul up too. When you say particular, are they singling out one residential dwelling out of, I don't know how many there are out there, 4 or 5 dormitories? Because that's what this says. You have to single out one, a particular one. Not just a whole host or group of them, too. You have to be in front of them. And what does in front mean? There's no definition of that. But usually you look at the building and the way it's facing, the entranceway where you walk in, and you go in front. Well, I don't know how far off to the sides is in front of. Maybe we better get that defined, too. So you look at this ordinance, it doesn't seem to apply to the only case that's been brought before us that says we need some ordinance to correct a real serious problem here. If it does apply, then I would think it's too difficult to enforce, and it's too difficult for people or protesters or the people who own the property or the people living in the dwellings on the property out of Scientology even understand what it means. There's several levels at which you can argue about what this actually allows, just this own ordinance out on that particular property out there. Now, again, usually I like to see some particular problems, serious problems, well up in different parts of the county, and the sheriffs and all our staff say, well, our current ordinance can't really cover that. We really need something more here. We don't have that in this case. And I don't care what San Diego does. I don't care what Orange County does. I don't care what the other counties do, because often they make mistakes. And we make mistakes. And we're going to make mistakes if we blindly just try to copycat some other ordinance without a clear and compelling case here. So I can't support this ordinance. I hope you can clarify if it does go into effect, because it seems to me it's going to be really a problem for everybody to try to interpret. And eventually you're going to spend a lot of money in court. People are going to try to get down to what this actually means. And there's going to be a lot of needless strife. It's going to create possibly more strife than it solves.
Thank you, Supervisor Buster. And I might mention that this has been vetted now for many, many months, and I want to applaud the opponents to the ordinance because it was through your testimony when we first tried to model it off San Diego that the 500 feet was just too restrictive. And I agreed wholeheartedly. The board, at the direction of Supervisor Wilson, said we need to take another look at this, and we did. And 30 feet was determined to be a reasonable distance to effectively target residential development. This ordinance does not have any bearing on you going to the entrance of Golden Era and doing your protests. No bearing. I think even if you were to not block the entrance to Golden Era, I'm not so sure there would have been any contentious issues with the sheriff had the direction just been followed. Just, don't block the ingress and egress to this facility. So it was a trespassing issue. But it doesn't stop you from continuing any protest in front of that facility. We vetted it. I certainly respect Supervisor Buster's input, but we have had county council collaborate with the sheriff, and there was this inference that, again, that Mr. Alhadeff was the tail wagging the dog and getting this thing done. And you'll remember that when we have Assistant Sheriff Pete LeBon came up when Mr. Alhadeff said, I'm happy to meet with county council to work the details out. Mr. LeBon very appropriately said, no, the sheriff department, in the absence of the private attorney, will meet with county council, and so that we understand what is being enforced in this ordinance. And they've had that collaboration, and as a result, the sheriff of this county supports what we're trying to do. Ms. Walls, it's been tested. I believe that there's clarity in the ordinance, and I just want you to reaffirm that in your legal views that it is clear and transparent, and it does provide the parameters under which a sheriff can very clearly enforce this new ordinance that we're entertaining here today.
Thank you. This ordinance, a similar ordinance, has been upheld in Klein, has been upheld in Thornburg. It should satisfy constitutional challenges and muster. We have worked with the Sheriff's Department. They've asked that this stay in place as a possible tool they can use. If not, with respect to this particular matter, but in other situations that may arise down the road. The extent of its applicability to the protests that are going on in front of Scientology now, we have affirmed that it is not necessarily applicable to that situation. Thank you.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. As you just got through saying, this has gone through so much revision and so many reiterations. I initially shared many of the concerns that Supervisor Buster had. I understand the opposition, and I understand those that feel fearful that perhaps they won't be able to do another Dochitz protest if we adopt this and so forth. And so back about 3 or 4 iterations ago, I asked for a 6-month bring back and report, and I don't know if that's been lost, but if we have a motion to approve this today, I would like a report from the sheriff in 6 months on how many arrests have been made on this ordinance, not on trespassing or all the things that we saw on the video, but on this ordinance. I'd like a report back of how effective it's been, how it was used, and whether there were problems involved in that enforcement. So if you're going to make a motion to approve, I would like to have that included in the motion.
I'll go ahead and make that motion with the recommendations of my colleague, Supervisor Wilson. Please vote. That passes with 4, Supervisor Buster dissenting.